here. Oh, she doing Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's been a year, maybe a little more. Hi, welcome back. I really want to start doing this again, and now that we're all in quarantine, why not, right? Today's story is about Chris Benoit, and if you don't know who Chris Benoit is, I will tell you. But basically, he was a famous wrestler. I grew up watching wrestling with my brother. Shout out Sam. So the story kind of hits home a little bit just because I watched Chris wrestle when I was younger. So Chris Benoit was born in Montreal, Canada in 1967 to Michael and Margaret Benoit. Around the age of 12, he saw a wrestling match and knew that's what he wanted to do as a profession. Bret Hart really stood out to him at this event, and he went on to begin training at the Hart Family Dungeon. I don't know. Chris started his actual wrestling career in 1985 by wrestling in Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling promotion. This went on until about 1989, but in 1986, he joined New Japan Wrestling and spent months doing strenuous activities like push-ups and floor sweeping before being actually allowed into the ring. He wrestled under the name the Pegasus Kid until 1994. Chris went to WCW, which is the World Championship Wrestling. That's what I watched, was WCW, and then kind of went into the WWE, WWF, but really it was all about the WCW in this house. He only had a short stint at this point in time in 1992 and ended in 1993, so just for about that year he was in the WCW, to Extreme Championship Wrestling, which, if you know wrestling, it's ECW. So it's a little more hardcore. In the Extreme Championship Wrestling is where he had his first mishap happen. At November to Remember, which was a live event held by ECW, he broke another wrestler's neck just seconds into the match. After this match, Benoit returned to his locker room and broke down over the possibility that he could have paralyzed somebody. After this, Paul Heyman, who was the head booker for the ECW, came up with the idea that Benoit be named Crippler Benoit. When he returned to the WCW in 1995, he went by the name Canadian Crippler Chris Benoit. Being a few years, so we're at 1994, and then he returned to WCW in 1995. During this time in the WCW, to enhance drama, Kevin Sullivan, who was the booker at WCW, booked a feud in which Benoit was supposed to have an affair with Kevin Sullivan's real-life wife, Nancy. Benoit and Nancy were forced to spend time together to make the affair look real, and then their on-screen affair turned into an off-screen real-life affair. By 1997, that marriage was no longer, and Benoit was actually living with Nancy. Forced Kevin Sullivan, and now her and Chris Benoit are together. In 2000, Chris and Nancy gave birth to a son named Daniel, and then later on that year, they tied the knot. By 2003, Nancy was filing for divorce. She cited that the marriage was irrevocably broken and alleged cruel treatment coming from Benoit. She claimed that he would break furniture and throw it around. She had also filed a restraining order, which later on she would drop, as well as a divorce, and continue her life with Benoit. Benoit moved to the WWF, where his career just kept growing. In 2004, Nancy's sister Sandra said that she had noticed a change in Benoit's personality. Benoit was known to abuse steroids, and allegedly Nancy was brutalized during some roid rage episodes that he had had. Benoit became friends with Eddie Guerrero following a match in Japan where Benoit kicked Guerrero in the head and knocked him out. In 2005, Guerrero suddenly died in a hotel room with a heart condition. This was followed by 2 of Benoit's other friends passing suddenly within 2 months. Many say this is when Benoit permanently changed into a broken man. Nancy had bought him a diary where he began writing letters to Eddie Guerrero, but soon they changed it to letters saying that he would be with Eddie soon. Paranoia then kicked in. Chris would take different routes to the airport and to the gym all the time. In his words, so his movements couldn't be monitored. At this point, Chris was off steroids, and many doctors have said that going off steroids after long-term use could result in severe depression. We are fast forwarding to June of 2007. This actually happened on Friday the 22nd. Nancy was attacked and attempted to fight Chris off. He bound her limbs, laid her on her stomach, and wrapped a cord around her neck. He then pressed his knee into her back and pulled on the cord, eventually strangling her to death. He then wrapped her body in a towel and put a Bible beside it. The next day, so Saturday, around 3:30 p.m., Benoit called Chavo Guerrero and said that he overslept and missed his flight to Beaumont, Texas. They were supposed to have a live event in Texas that weekend. There were actually 2 of them. Guerrero said something was wrong and called him back. Benoit told him that he had a long day because both Nancy and Daniel were sick with food poisoning. The phone call ended with Benoit telling Guerrero he loved him, which was uncharacteristic for him. I've heard Chavo talk on this, and it was just his demeanor and the way that he said it. That night, so Saturday night, between 3:51 a.m. and 3:58 a.m., Benoit sent 5 text messages between his phone and Nancy's phone to coworkers. The first and second messages were from his phone, and they stated, "My physical address is 130 Green Meadow Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia." The second one, "The dogs are in the enclosed pool area, garage side door open." The third, fourth, and fifth messages were from Nancy's phone, and they all stated, "My physical address is 130 Green Meadow Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia." No one knows why he sent these messages. They have not figured it out. The time of Daniel's death is unknown, but it is believed that he passed away sometime between Saturday and Sunday, as his body wasn't as decomposed as his mother's was. Benoit did give his son a dose of Xanax to sedate him and then strangled him, also leaving a Bible by his body as well. Today, Benoit made a couple of internet searches, one being a search on the quickest way to break one's neck. He then went down to his home gym with a half-drunken bottle of wine, took the cord from his lap pull-down machine, put it around his neck. Benoit then took his own life. On June 25th, which would be Monday, police entered the home after WWE called and requested a welfare check after Benoit missed both events that weekend without any real notice. The officers then discovered the body of Nancy and Daniel around 2:30 p.m. and then found Benoit's body. Toxicology reports released on July 17, 2007 revealed at the time of death, Nancy had 3 different drugs in her system: Xanax, hydrocodone, and hydromorphone, all of which were found at therapeutic levels, not toxic levels. Benoit was found to have Xanax, hydrocodone, and an elevated testosterone in his system. Actually, it was 10 times the normal amount of testosterone that a normal body has. Talk about theories now. I'm just going to go over these really quickly. Yeah. Benoit was known to have used steroids, obviously, and have these roid rage incidents. So could this have been a roid rage incident that went very wrong? Police found steroids on the scene, and many had just assumed that had explained what happened. Chris Nowinski, who was a former professional wrestler and now PhD, says the steroids were not what happened. CTE, which is, and hold on, I'm going to get Google to pronounce it for us.
Encephalopathy.
So chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Chronic traumatic
Encephalopathy.
So chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, is a progressive degenerative brain disease that appears to start by taking blows to the head. Chris Nowinski was actually studying this because he had had concussions before in his life. At this time, there were only 4 total cases of CTE, and they were all within NFL players who had died by suicide, and one had started hearing voices and led the police on a chase through upstate New York that led to his demise. Chris Benoit had talked to Nowinski about the book he was writing on concussions and asked him questions about it. Benoit said that he had had more concussions than he could count, and this led Nowinski to believe that maybe Chris had CTE and caused this break. After doing a study on his brain, they came to the conclusion that Benoit did indeed have CTE, and parts of his brain were affected, could have also affected his emotions. So there's a lot more to the story than what I have. Listening to the last podcast on the left, they have a story. Chris Jericho, who has a podcast, he was a former wrestler as well. He has information on it as well. And then I even watched Vice's Dark Side of the Ring, which was very informative. Take a shot every time I say So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And for those who watch, I thank you so much. Sorry, this is kind of anticlimactic. I just really wanted to talk about it. And yeah. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.